Hey everyone, welcome back. If you saw the last video, you'll remember we talked all about the wild election of 1824, the one that went down in history as the corrupt bargain. Well, today we're continuing that story. This time we're digging into how the fallout from that election didn't just end with one presidency. It actually transformed American politics and helped shape the democracy we know today. So if you haven't seen part 1 yet, make sure to check that out. But if you're all caught up, let's jump right into part 2 of the election that shook the world. November 1824. Across a nation of 13 million people, the ballots are cast. Farmers, merchants, and laborers file into polling places, many for the first time in their lives. The promise of democracy is alive. The people believe their voice will decide the nation's future. When the votes were counted, one truth was clear. Andrew Jackson was the people's choice. He won more popular votes than any other candidate. He won more electoral votes than any other candidate. But the Constitution demanded not a plurality, but a majority. Jackson had 99 electoral votes, Adams 84, Crawford 41, Clay 37. No candidate had reached the required 131. The Constitution was clear. When no majority existed, the House of Representatives would choose the president. For the first time in American history, the people's voice had been denied by the arithmetic of the Electoral College. Jackson, the hero of the people, had won the most votes, and yet victory slipped from his grasp. Across taverns, churches, and newspapers, Americans argued, was democracy failing before their eyes? Was the will of the people nothing more than an illusion? According to the 12th Amendment, only the top 3 candidates would be considered by the House. That meant Henry Clay, though eliminated, still held enormous power. As Speaker of the House, he could shape the outcome. Clay despised Jackson. He saw in him not a hero, but a tyrant in waiting, a man unfit to hold the nation's highest office. Adams, though distant and cold, shared Clay's vision of internal improvements, a national bank, and a strong federal government. Behind closed doors, the two men met. What was said in those conversations remains uncertain, but soon rumors spread. Clay would throw his support to Adams, and in return, Adams would appoint Clay Secretary of State, the traditional stepping stone to the presidency. On February 9, 1825, the House of Representatives voted. One by one, the states declared their choice: 13 for Adams, 7 for Jackson, 4 for Crawford. John Quincy Adams was elected the 6th President of the United States. The result sent shockwaves across the nation. Jackson's supporters were furious. To them, the election had been stolen, the people's will betrayed, their victory bartered away in smoke-filled rooms. Jackson himself was enraged. He declared the bargain corrupt, a conspiracy of elites against the people. He vowed revenge, not with violence, but at the ballot box, and beyond America, the world watched with fascination. In Europe, monarchs smirked. Proof, they said, that republics were unstable, that democracy was weak. In Latin America, revolutionaries wondered, if even the United States could not respect the people's voice, what chance did their own fragile republics have? The election of 1824 was over, but the battle for America's soul had only begun. Out of betrayal would come a movement. Out of anger would come a revolution in politics, and out of Andrew Jackson's fury would rise a new kind of democracy. The House had spoken. John Quincy Adams was president, but the decision was tainted before it even began. Almost at once, whispers spread across Washington, rumors of a deal struck between Adams and Henry Clay. A deal that would change not only the election, but the very faith Americans placed in their democracy. According to the whispers, Clay had thrown his influence in the House behind Adams, and in return, Adams promised Clay the most coveted prize in Washington, the office of Secretary of State, long seen as the pathway to the presidency itself. To Jackson's supporters, the evidence was undeniable. Jackson had won the people's vote. Jackson had won the most electoral votes. Yet the prize was stolen by backroom bargaining, as one newspaper thundered, by what it described as a corrupt bargain. The reaction was swift and furious. Across the nation, angry citizens denounced the betrayal. Pamphlets accused Clay of selling his honor. Adams, they said, had purchased the presidency like a merchant buys goods, and Jackson, once celebrated as a hero, was now hailed as the rightful but cheated leader of the people. The bitterness was personal. Jackson had trusted the process. He believed the people's will would prevail. Instead, he saw himself as the victim of a conspiracy among elites who feared his rough edges and his popularity. Adams and Clay denied the charges. Adams insisted he had made no promises. He claimed Clay supported him because their visions aligned, not because of personal ambition. Clay, in turn, declared he could not in good conscience support Jackson, whom he considered dangerous and unfit. But the denials mattered little. The perception of corruption was more powerful than any defense. To the public, Adams and Clay had struck a devil's bargain, and perception, in politics, can be destiny. Jackson seized upon the outrage. He told his followers that the election had been stolen, that the people's will had been crushed by scheming politicians. His words struck a chord with millions who already distrusted Washington elites. For the first time in American politics, the cry of a stolen election became a rallying call. And in that moment, American democracy entered a new phase. No longer was politics confined to polite debates among elites. It was becoming a battle of narratives, of popular passion, of loyalty not just to parties but to personalities. Beyond America, the corrupt bargain was watched with fascination. In Europe, monarchs and ministers chuckled at the scandal. To them, it was proof that democracy was unstable, that the rule of the people could be twisted by ambition and intrigue. In Latin America, revolutionaries studied the events with worry. If even the United States could not honor the people's will, what did that mean for their own fragile republics? The world had looked to America as a beacon of liberty, but after 1824, many wondered, was that beacon flickering? John Quincy Adams would enter the White House, but without the love of the people. Andrew Jackson would leave Washington, furious, determined, and ready for revenge. Out of scandal was born a movement. Out of betrayal was born a new party. And out of the ashes of 1824, American politics would be transformed forever. John Quincy Adams took the oath of office in March 1825. He was learned, disciplined, and dedicated to the public good. But he was also a president without a mandate. Half the nation believed he had stolen his power. Half believed he sat in the White House not by the people's will, but by political trickery. Adams sought to govern as a visionary. He dreamed of roads and canals binding the nation together, of universities to educate future leaders, of a scientific observatory that would bring the heavens closer to man. But each proposal met fierce resistance. To Jackson's supporters in Congress, Adams' every idea was illegitimate, tainted by the manner of his election. They blocked his policies at every turn, not merely out of principle, but as revenge. Adams was president, but in truth he was trapped in a cage of hostility. Meanwhile, Andrew Jackson did not fade into history. He sharpened his anger into a weapon. His allies spread the story of betrayal into every town and village. Newspapers thundered against the corrupt bargain. Pamphlets declared Jackson the people's rightful champion. What began as outrage became organization. Jackson's followers united, not under the old fading Democratic-Republican banner, but as something new, a party of the people, a party of democracy, a party built not around elites in Washington, but around Andrew Jackson himself. Thus, the Democratic Party was born. Its creed was simple. The people's voice must be heard. The people's will must not be silenced, and those who betrayed it, like Adams and Clay, must be punished at the ballot box. For the first time, America saw a truly national political campaign. Rallies, slogans, songs, and parades turned politics into spectacle. Jackson was not just a candidate, he was a symbol. To his followers, he was the living embodiment of democracy itself. This was politics transformed. No longer quiet debates in Congress. No longer deference to elites. Instead, politics became a battlefield of mass movements, fueled by passion, loyalty, and identity. The fallout of 1824 had reshaped America. John Quincy Adams sat isolated in the White House, brilliant but despised. Andrew Jackson rallied a nation of farmers, workers, and frontiersmen behind him. And for the first time in history, the United States was divided into organized, competing political parties. The corrupt bargain had broken trust in the system, but paradoxically, it had also awakened a new kind of democracy, messy, passionate, and enduring. From betrayal had come revolution, from outrage, a movement, and from Andrew Jackson's fury would come a presidency unlike any the world had ever seen. John Quincy Adams governed with brilliance, but without love. His vision was lofty: roads, canals, a national university, a grand observatory. But every proposal was strangled in the cradle by enemies in Congress. He lacked the one thing a president most needs: legitimacy in the eyes of the people. He became a prisoner of his own intellect, noble but aloof, principled but powerless. And while he labored in isolation, Andrew Jackson prepared his revenge. From the moment Adams was sworn in, Jackson's supporters began campaigning for 1,828. It was the longest presidential campaign in history to that point. Nearly 4 years of relentless organizing, pamphleteering, and agitation. The Jacksonians mastered something new: the permanent political campaign. They organized voters, built local clubs, spread newspapers, and turned politics into a living, breathing movement. For the first time, America witnessed the birth of the modern political party. The corrupt bargain had not killed democracy. It had redefined it. Power no longer flowed only through backrooms and congressional debates. It flowed through the people themselves, mobilized, energized, and angry. The election of 1828 was unlike anything the Republic had ever seen. It was fierce. It was ugly. It was personal. Jackson's beloved wife, Rachel, became a target. Adams' supporters accused her of bigamy, questioning her virtue. Jackson was enraged, calling it a vile slander that would haunt him for the rest of his life. For the first time, American politics had descended into open character assassination. Democracy was no longer just a contest of ideas, it was a contest of identities, of passions, of loyalty to a man rather than just a party. In November 1828, the people spoke again. This time there was no question. Andrew Jackson won a sweeping victory, claiming 178 electoral votes to Adams' 83. The hero of the Battle of New Orleans, the champion of the common man, had become the 7th president of the United States. But tragedy shadowed his triumph. Rachel Jackson, his beloved wife, died before he took office. Jackson believed the vicious attacks on her character had broken her heart. He entered the White House not in joy, but in mourning. The rise of Andrew Jackson marked the birth of a new era. No longer would presidents be chosen quietly by congressional elites. From now on, they would be chosen by the people, through mass politics, rallies, slogans, and fierce campaigns. It was democracy unleashed, messy, passionate, often cruel. But it was also enduring. The election of 1828 transformed America into a true two-party system. Jackson's Democrats claimed to speak for the people. Adams' supporters, soon to become Whigs, claimed to defend order, progress, and principle. The corrupt bargain of 1824 had seemed like a betrayal, but out of betrayal was born something new, a democracy both more dangerous and more resilient. A democracy not of elites, but of the people themselves. And that, for better or worse, is the democracy we inherit today. The election of 1824 was more than a contest of men. It was a test of a system, a moment when the American experiment seemed to falter, when the will of the people clashed with the mechanics of the Constitution. It was a betrayal to some, a necessity to others. But above all, it was a turning point. From it came the modern two-party system. From it came mass political campaigns. From it came the idea that presidents must answer not to elites in Washington, but to the voice of the people. And from it came Andrew Jackson's rise, a presidency forged in fire, born of fury. Yet the legacy is not simple, for the election of 1824 also showed democracy's fragility, that the rules of the game, the structures of power, can shape outcomes more than popular will, that democracy can bend under pressure, even when it does not break. It asked questions that echo to this day. What happens when the majority's choice is denied? When backroom deals outweigh the ballot box? When legitimacy is lost, but the system survives. Again and again, America has faced echoes of 1824. In elections where the popular vote did not match the outcome, in moments when the people's faith in the system was shaken, in accusations, real or imagined, of betrayal and corruption. To study 1824 is not to take sides, but to recognize a truth. Democracy is not a machine that runs itself. It is a fragile compact, sustained only by faith, by trust, by the willingness of winners and losers alike to believe the process has meaning. The election of 1824 was called the corrupt bargain, but perhaps its true corruption was not the bargain itself, but the doubt it planted in the minds of millions. Doubt about fairness, doubt about legitimacy, doubt that the people's voice would be honored. And yet, from that doubt came transformation, a louder, harsher, more inclusive democracy. A democracy tested, scarred, but alive. In the end, the story of 1824 is not just about Jackson, Adams, or Clay. It is about us, about the fragile, unfinished experiment of self-government, about the eternal struggle to make the voice of the people not only heard, but obeyed. Thank you for joining us on this journey through one of the most dramatic elections in history. If you believe history holds lessons for today, please like this video, share your reflections in the comments, and subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden stories of politics and philosophy.